50 feet long, but I read about an ark over in the book of Exodus that was really, really small, just a few feet long, and thus the Bible writers made a mistake. Well, no, obviously that is not a mistake, that's not a contradiction, because in Genesis 6 we have Noah's ark, and in the book of Exodus we have the, what? The Ark of the Covenant. Someone might say, well, Eric, I remember one time in the Old Testament where there was a man by the name of Zechariah who was called the son of Jehoiada. And the Bible mentions that he was stoned with stones in the court of the house of the Lord. But when I flip over to my New Testament and I look in Matthew chapter 23, I remember reading Jesus called Zechariah the son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. And someone might say, as many have, that Jesus blundered or that Matthew blundered in recording this. First of all, you must make sure that Jesus was referring to the same person. Is it possible that Jesus was referring to a different Zechariah? Yes, it's very possible. Just because the death of another Zechariah may not have been recorded doesn't mean that Jesus could not have been including Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo, mentioned in the book Zechariah, the minor prophet, chapter 1 and verse 1. Just because his death may not be recorded in the Old Testament doesn't mean that Jesus would not have known about his death, or that Jesus could not have known about it either through tradition or because he was God in the flesh and simply would have known about it. And interestingly, the fact is, this Zechariah, even though I read a skeptic's article some time back who said there is no Zechariah the son of Berechiah in the Old Testament. And yet, in Zechariah 1 and verse 1, we read Zechariah being called the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo. And then we must also make sure that Jesus was not referring to a Zechariah in the time in which he lived when he was referring to the Pharisees killing the Zechariah. You see, it could be that he was referring to what the Pharisees' fathers had done, what their ancestors had done, but it's also very possible that there was a Zechariah who died in the time of Christ at the hands of the Pharisees. The same person, place, or thing must be under consideration. But second, the same time must be under consideration. Someone has read the Bible and they've said, well, I read in Genesis chapter 1 where God made everything and behold, it was very good. But in Genesis chapter 6, I remember reading where all of the intents or the thoughts of everyone on earth besides Noah and his family were evil. And someone might say, here's a contradiction. Everything was good, nearly everything on earth was evil. Well, what's the difference here? The difference is you have hundreds and hundreds of years that have passed from the time of creation to the time of Noah. Someone once alleged that there was a contradiction between what Genesis chapter 11 has to say about the whole earth having one language and one speech, and what we read one chapter before in regard to the Gentiles being separated into their lands, everyone according to his language. Well, keep in mind, are we talking about the same time period? This is a very interesting alleged discrepancy, to me anyway, because what we have is Genesis 11 verse 1, actually, the events recorded there took place back sometime when the names were given in Genesis chapter 10. Again, you have an example of the chapters not being arranged or even written chronologically. Furthermore, the whole earth was of one language at one time, and at a later time, at a different time, then everyone was divided, the earth was divided, that is, the people were divided, and they gathered with people of their own language. And then finally, the same sense, again, as we stress these points, must be under consideration. The same sense. Let's go back to the statement that Jesus contradicted what the Old Testament said about Zechariah being the son of Jehoiada and not the son of Berechiah. Well, we need to also understand that it's possible Jesus was using the term son in a different sense than we may normally use it. In fact, the Bible oftentimes uses the term son in different ways. It may be that the Bible is referring to the son of someone, meaning the disciple of someone. As Samuel was called the son of Eli, being the disciple of Eli. It may be that the Bible is referring to the son, even though specifically it may be the son-in-law, as David was the son-in-law of Saul, even though he was called his son at some point. And so you have the word son being used in a variety of ways, including in the book of Ezra, where you have Zechariah there being called the son of Adu. But when you go to Zechariah 1:1, you have Zechariah being called the son of Berechiah, the son of Adu. Sometimes the word son simply meant a grandson or a great-grandson. One of the more well-known alleged discrepancies is found in the accounts of Paul seeing Jesus on the road to Damascus. He received a heavenly vision, and Paul, we find out in Acts chapter 9, heard Jesus. And Acts chapter 9 tells us, and the men who journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice but seeing no one. And then we can read in Acts chapter 22, where Paul, recounting these events, said, they did not hear the voice. So they did hear a voice or they did not hear a voice. Is this a contradiction? I think we can answer this fairly easily. Gentlemen, have you ever been guilty of hearing your wife but not hearing your wife? I see some head shaking. Far too many times, my wife, bless her heart, she's a wonderful Christian woman. I have sat there in my car listening to her, hearing her. But what was I not doing? I was not hearing her. I was not listening to her. I may have had a lesson on my mind. I may have had my work on my mind. But the fact is, we use those terms in different senses. And the Bible writers did the same thing. The fact of the matter is, time and time and time again, when someone alleges that the Bible writers made mistakes, here is what we find out. We simply misunderstood what they wrote. We didn't realize they were using figures of speech at the beginning. We didn't realize that they weren't writing everything in chronological order. We didn't realize that they used words just as we do today in the 21st century, that they used words in different senses. The fact is, the Bible is the reliable Word of God.